Okay, today is 6.1, Intro to Polynomials. So our new unit is going to be all about polynomials. We're going to be doing a lot this unit. It's kind of a long unit, but what we're going to start by doing is first talking about what exactly is a polynomial and what are some key parts of the polynomial. So a polynomial is an expression that can have constants, variables, and exponents. So you guys are already familiar with polynomials, and when we talk about polynomials, there's actually two ways to write a polynomial. So we're going to write that. Two ways to write a polynomial. So we're just going to make a little chart here. So polynomials. So one way to write it is to write it in standard form. Okay, you guys are already probably familiar with standard form. An example of a polynomial in standard form could be y equals negative 4x to the third plus 2x squared plus 6. And when something is written in standard form, we can actually identify a couple things. So the first thing we can identify is the degree. The degree is the highest exponent. So in this case, the degree is going to be 3, right? And if you want, you can also highlight this and write it as the degree. Next is what we call the leading term. The leading term is the term that has the degree, right? So the term that has the degree. So in this case, the term would be this whole thing. It would be negative 4x to the third because it contains the highest exponent. So it would be negative 4x to the third. Now, in addition to the leading term, we also have what's called the leading coefficient. This is the coefficient that is connected to the degree. So in this case, the leading coefficient is negative 4. It's the number or the coefficient connected to the degree. So the leading coefficient in this case is negative 4. And sometimes I just call it LC because I'm lazy. And then we also have our constant, right, which is also known as our y-intercept. And this is the number without a variable. So in this case, our constant would be, I'll highlight it here, it would be 6, right? Because that is the number without a variable. And then lastly, we can also determine the number of terms, okay? So number of terms, in this case, we have 1 term, 2 terms, and 3 terms. So we have 3 terms. Okay, so as you can see, there's actually a lot of information that we can tell when we're given the standard form. Now, another form that you guys are familiar with that you can also write polynomials in is what we call the factored form. Okay, factored form. Now, in the factored form, there is, again, some key information that you can figure out. So let's just write an example. Let's say we have y equals x minus 3 squared times x plus 7. So you can actually still figure out the degree, but the way that you do it is a little bit different. With the degree, you add the exponents, okay? So for example, this x plus 7 has an invisible exponent of 1, so we're going to add together 2 plus 1. The 2 plus 1 is going to give us our 3, which is the degree, okay? Now, the other key info that you can find from factored form is the zeros, right? And y'all are already familiar with the zeros. And remember, the zeros are where the graph crosses the x-axis, right? So we can actually solve for our zeros by setting each parentheses equal to 0, right? So if I have, I'm going to just rewrite the equation. Some of y'all already know the shortcut, and if you do, that's great, but I'm going to set each parentheses equal to 0. I solve for x becomes positive 3, and x equals negative 7. So those are my two zeros, okay? So in the factored form, you can find the degree and the zeros. Now, some other information regarding degree. Once you find the degree, this is the last part, and then you guys are going to try some practice. Once you find the degree, you can define the polynomial, okay? So once you find the degree, you can define the polynomial. So we're going to make a little like T-chart like this. We'll say degree, and then we'll call it definition. So we're going to go up to the 5th degree. So 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So if something is has a degree of 1, meaning the highest exponent is 1, we call it a linear function or linear polynomial. If the degree is 2, meaning the highest exponent is 2, we call it a quadratic. If the degree is 3, meaning the highest exponent is 3, we call it cubic. If the highest exponent is 4, that's what we call a quartic, right? Quart means 4. And then if the degree is 5, we call it a quintic function, okay? So based on the degree, so for example, let's say I had y equals 3x to the 4th minus 3x squared plus 7. Well, my degree, which is the highest exponent, which is 4, if the degree is 4, that means it's going to be a quartic polynomial. So we can define it as a quartic polynomial, okay? So the first part of practice is you guys are going to practice identifying key parts as well as giving the definition of the polynomial. And then the second part of this lesson, you're going to watch another video, is on shapes of graphs.